This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Greetings, Buckheads. Mayvar Tagar. Welcome to our special Bantha Tracks bonus episode. Kind of a Captain's Log supplemental episode to put with our review. Well, more like our reaction podcast that we just dropped for episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Season 2 of Andor. As I mentioned on that podcast, I had a lot of thoughts, and I was still kind of processing things. But I'm back, and we're going to talk about one of those bigger elements of the show. Again, this is the Mandovision podcast. I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. Reach out to us on those socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter/X, and Insta, Mandovision at Blue Sky. And hey, you can email me, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Alright, so, as I said, I was processing these episodes. You know, we're getting so much content and information in these 3 episodes that are dropping every week. You know, it's dense. It takes a little time to pull it apart. And I'll be honest, the way I'm watching it, and the way I'm doing these reaction episodes, I don't have a ton of time. So, again, the format we're doing right now is very challenging for me. So, we may do more supplemental episodes as we kind of move through the show, because there are elements that I wanted to go back and touch on a little bit more, because as I thought about it, particularly like when I woke up the next morning, one element of the last 3 episodes that I was really chewing on had to do with Cassian and Bix. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this little bonus episode, this companion piece for episode 309. And I hope you enjoy my thoughts here and come along for the ride with me, all right? So let's go ahead. You know what that means, my friends. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So what I wanted to talk about in this special companion piece episode is the 3 relationships that are sort of central to this arc of the story, and sort of how they play against each other, because I think it's very, very interesting. Obviously, the first one is the big one, which is Cassian and Bix. And, you know, in the first arc of this season, we didn't get to see much of that relationship, of that dynamic, because Cassian was away. Cassian was detained. He wasn't able to get back to see Bix and to be part of that pseudo family of people who left Ferrix on the run from the Empire, with Brasso and Wilman and stuff like that. So he was sort of like the missing component of that dynamic. And the loss of that dynamic in the second arc, as we move a year forward into the timeline, into being a year closer to the Death Star, is the effects that it has mostly on Bix. Obviously, we saw in the first arc how Bix was still haunted by everything at the hands of Gorman. Of Dr. Gorst. And now, when she was on Mineral, she had structure, right? She had those problems at night still, but she had a routine. She had a day-to-day. She had Wilman and Brasso, and she was sort of able to establish at least enough of a routine that she was more highly functional than she appears to be in the second arc. And in the second arc, you know, without Brasso, without Wilman around, she's sort of isolated. She's stuck in this apartment on Coruscant, And clearly there's something that went on, in between these arcs. She looks like she went on a mission with Cassian. They killed somebody who saw their faces, and she didn't agree with that decision, so that seems to be haunting her, as well as everything with Gorst still. We find her, again, out of her routine, so she's not sleeping, she's taking substances, and Cassian, for his part, is trying to be there for her, to be helpful and protective of her, and do all the things for her, but it's challenging. It isn't until that third episode that Cassian kind of figures it out, how best, at least in his way, of how best for her to sort of process this, and that is to kill Gorst. And it's a great sequence. It's really, really fun, and it's great to see Bix get that level of revenge in the arc. And I guess we will have to wait and see if that sort of exercises the demons for her. But what this relationship does in its, I guess the effect this relationship has on Cassian is it sort of has changed things for him. He can't be the character that he was in the first season, and even a little bit of it in the first arc. He can't just live and die for the cause. He's now trying to live for someone else. He's trying to do what he can do to fight the Empire, to do the things he has to do. But there's consequences for the things he does. There is someone that he loves on the other side of things now, and I think it's altering the way he chooses to fight the battles. Luthen sends him to Gorman to assess the viability of the Gorman front, and if it's viable. And I do think Cassian is right that he doesn't think they're ready for it, that they're gonna get themselves killed. I think that's a fair and honest assessment on Cassian's part. But like Luthen says, he's thinking just like a soldier, not like a leader, and he's not seeing the opportunity here. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Bix is at home, and he has Bix waiting for him, and it's sort of tempering him and forcing him to kind of think a little bit more conservatively, because he doesn't want to die on Gorman with these freedom fighters who I think he honestly believes will just get him killed. Which takes us to the next relationship that we needed to talk about a little bit, which is Vel and Senta, which is pretty much the worst case scenario that I think Cassian sort of predicts, which is these sort of star-crossed lovers brought together by the rebellion, their role in taking a stand against the Empire, brought together by Luthen, and they find love for each other, which is again different from Bix and Cassian, who seemingly grew up together on Ferrix and have a history and all these things. These two brought together by their fight against the Empire, and they find love and comfort with one another, and they're sort of separated and torn apart by the various things that Luthen has them doing. And again, whether that's right or wrong on Luthen's part is up for debate. But I think it's interesting. Obviously, they have genuine feelings for each other, but they each have very different perspectives on their relationship and how it fits into the battle against the Empire. Obviously, Senta is the fight first, and Vel is love first. And that comes into play with the Gorman front as what Cassian has to his prediction essentially comes true as Senta dies, and it's one of the most needless deaths that you can possibly imagine. It's tragic, it's sad, it's heartbreaking in many senses, and you could equate it to like the cost of war kind of situation. But at the same time, this is exactly what Cassian was saying. These people aren't ready for this fight. They don't know what they're doing, and they're gonna get people killed, and that is exactly what happens here. So it's interesting to kind of look at it through the relationships here. And there is a third party, a third relationship in this show that, despite its odd nature, at least to the casual outside viewer, we have to talk about Dedra and Cyril. And again, it as we maybe talked about, as maybe we touched on in our reaction episode, is it a relationship of convenience? Is it a relationship based on manipulation and deceit? It might be a little bit of all these things, but there is an emotional component that works for Cyril. Dedra still doesn't feel like the warmest of partners or companions, but she's doing a relationship the way that she can best do one, which seems to be able to give Cyril the sort of validation that he needs, and then be able to use him to get what she needs as far as his role in setting up the Gorman front, and the way he gets an attaboy from Partagast as well at the ISB. I mean, he's getting these compliments and he's doing these things, but he's very clearly being manipulated by both Partagast and by Dedra. So, again, is it a relationship of convenience? Is there something more there? Again, we know a little bit more about Dedra's background and why she, at least on the surface, appears to be somewhat emotionally unavailable. But for whatever reason, this works for Cyril. And and again, Cyril's a very damaged person. His relationship with his mother has, I think, had an effect on his choice of partners. And again, Dedra's able to see that just by giving a little bit of validation, by instilling a little bit of confidence in Cyril, it goes a long way. And it seems to require minimal effort on her part to just kind of give him a decent amount of self-respect. So again, as interesting as it's a fascinating relationship to study. Again, I'm sort of curious if there are real feelings there mostly on Dedra's part. I think Cyril is very much into this relationship, but is Dedra invested in the same way, or is it sort of politically convenient? And by politically, I just mean for her career, because Cyril's kind of become an asset. He's somebody that the ISB can use and is using. But Cyril's interesting to watch, especially his growth from this arc to where they were in the first one, when Dedra has the negotiation with his mother. It's fascinating to kind of bounce these relationship dynamics off of each other. You know, Dedra and Cyril, Valencinta, Cassian and Bix, and kind of seeing how they're also different, and how their roles in whether it's the Empire, the ISB, the rebellion, the burgeoning rebellion, how they all kind of come to affect each other, and the way they do things, the way they process their feelings and emotions. So it was something that I wish I had touched on a little bit more in our reaction episodes, but again, there was a lot of things to pull apart. You know, I also didn't touch much on Saw Gerrera. Him telling that story about being a prisoner on Onuran in the jungle, dealing with cargo and the Rhydonium, is fascinating. And I think one of the things I have decided that after Andor wraps, we will get into each episode specifically. I'm going to try to cut those in around doing our Rebels rewatches. But I thought going back into this and talking about those three relationships in this arc was something worth doing for a supplemental Bantha Tracks bonus episode of the show. So thank you for indulging me and kind of letting me go back into this a little bit more. I do think these relationship dynamics are very, very interesting. Obviously, Cassian and Bix is the big one because, well, it just feels doomed. It feels like Cassian is going to do everything he can to try and protect her, and maybe now he's going to decide that with Gorse dead, she'll stop taking these drugs. She can go back out into the field with him, and they can fight the Empire together and watch out for each other and have each other's backs. But I think we all feel like there's something inevitably bad is going to happen to Bix that puts Cassian on his path to Rogue One. Obviously, a big tell with that would be the gun the blaster that Bix uses to kill Gorst, the same gun that Cassian has and uses to kill Krennic in Rogue One. So, again, some very interesting elements, some foreshadowing maybe. I find it all completely fascinating, as usual. The show grabs my attention. It makes you think about what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and how it relates to everything. It's one of the more fun aspects of the show, and I guess we can sort of bounce these relationships off of Luthen as well, and even Partagast as sort of like the head of the ISB is sort of his opposite number. And these are people who, again, we don't know Partagast's deal necessarily, but I think like Luthen, he is a person who's put their sort of mission above all else, above personal relationship. As Luthen tells us in season 1, what does it cost him? Everything. And so he knows that he's on a doomed path. And I think Cassian's not there yet. Cassian is still trying to have his cake and eat it too. Thinks he can defeat the Empire and have a life with Bix, not realizing, much like Vel has just realized, that there is not really a happy ending in store for them at this point in things, the way this rebellion is sort of struggling to find its footing. So again, there's a certain sadness and a certain tragedy to all of these characters and all these relationships, because with our heroes, with Val and Cassian, they want to have love and they want to fight the Empire and they want to do these things, but you have to look at Luthen and see what he gave up and see what he sacrificed for this. And I suppose Clea would probably fit in the same bill. We don't know much of her life outside of Luthen, but I suspect it's very similar to Luthen's. It's a solitary life, a lonely life, and that's sort of the price that must be paid to stand up to tyranny. You know, like, I don't want to say like it goes back into like a Jedi sort of thing where like attachments in the face of rebellion are a bad idea, but again, I mean, if you're going to engage in war against a fascist, militaristic government, there is a price to be paid for that. And the idea of a happy ending for you is probably not in the cards. But again, it's fascinating. It's interesting. I can't wait to see more of these relationships kind of play out. Obviously, Vel and Senta now have come to a tragic conclusion. But how is that going to affect Vel moving forward, now that she is on a more direct path to being like Luthen? Or is it going to push her back and away from Luthen and his relentless pursuit of fighting tyranny? I can't wait to see what happens next. It's going to be really a lot of fun. This next arc, I suspect, is going to be massively entertaining and devastating and tragic and sad and all these things. So, again, I thank you for your indulgence, coming back for this little supplemental podcast. I appreciate you guys being here. Again, this is the Mandovision podcast. I am your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. Hit us up on the socials, Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and you can email me, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And if you're on the Apple Podcast and you're inclined, sweet 5-star reviews help the small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in that intergalactic shuffle. Ooh, excuse me, getting a little choked up there. Again, thank you all for being here. We'll be back very, very soon to talk about the next 3 episodes of Andor, or at least react to them. Like I said, I think it's going to be a wild one next week, so let's buckle up and let's keep our buckets on for safety. All right, friends? All right, go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, and just there for each other. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!